So my talk's about DarkFi, which is L1 for anonymous smart contracts. Um, the name DarkFi actually comes from a project of ours called Dark Wallet back in 2013, where the director of the FBI said that cryptography threatens to create a significant public safety problem, which they call the going dark problem, whereby dark zones are created on the internet through which law enforcement cannot enter. So these dark spaces are liminal zones on the internet that are beyond the reach of law enforcement, and this is where we get this name dark file. Dark comes from dark wallet, and you know DarkFi is literally for fully programmable anonymous smart contracts. It's an entire stack. It has communication. We are creating the entire suite of privacy applications, and there's like a cool meme. You know, we we were in a time of doomerism where everybody was like, everything's fucked and there's nothing we can do. But I think there is a more recent shift in mindset where there's like a strand of optimism that in this global breakup of power there is also a time to mobilize, a time of opportunity, and this is the lunar punks mobilizing against our modern dystopia. And make no mistake, governments know this stuff is a threat to their power. That's why they're persecuting cryptocurrency people. They're putting people in jail. But it's mainly the people that are political in cryptocurrency, the ideological people. In particular, they're targeting privacy developers. They're doing that because they're trying to frighten us into compliance. But actually, if it's a signal of where they're vulnerable and where we should hit them hardest. So, you might go, okay, why do I need a DarkFi? Well, imagine you need to buy gender-affirming drugs on the internet and you live in an authoritarian regime like North Korea and they're putting your friends in jail. What do you need to do? You want to mobilize to expand the space of freedom. You need to be able to set up online treasury anonymously. You need to be able to fund that. You need to be able to collectively allocate resources. You need to plan. You need to communicate. You need to be able to pay salaries. You need to be able to swap that out. That's the entire stack that DarkFi is providing. We have anonymous payments, token issuance, DEX, DAO, communication, task management. These are some of the tools you can see here. There's a node explorer, there's a wallet, ZK compiler. We've built the stack from the ground up to be adversarial, to be able to operate in a high stakes environment. Cryptocurrency was meant to offer a promise. That's what the book, The Sovereign Individual from the 90s was talking about. Why didn't that thesis happen? I think the biggest missing ingredient was anonymity. We learned that from Assange now. People don't know that, but Assange, the U.S. justice system, their strategy was to bankrupt him. And we actually made Assange DAO that bankrolled Assange's freedom. There's the reason Assange didn't go to jail. It's 55 million that we raised. But one of the big issues with the DAO is it had this massive treasury of 55 million in it to free a political prisoner. And it was a transparent DAO, so people didn't want to act in it. And you have to think like DAOs There was a promise in 2021 that DAOs would create a new form of post-corporate governance structure that we would socially organize through DAOs. It's all right. I don't need it. It's all right. When it comes back, I'll continue. Uh, it's all right. I'm not bothered. But at least I can stand here now. Um, yes. So DAOs were meant to create. Everybody was talking about, oh yeah, DAOs will enable a new form of human social organization. We were able to mobilize them to change society, to change politics. In fact, this is like a bigger thesis inside of cryptocurrency. Why didn't that happen in 2021 with DAOs? I mean, this Assange DAO experience, the reason I bring up is it tells us that if you want to do real shit, if you want to change things, you can't have a transparent DAO on ETH. That's why it didn't work. And that's why in DarkFi, we literally have made the world's first and only anonymous DAO. Like fully anonymous DAO. The treasury's anonymous, the people are anonymous. Nothing like that exists in crypto. Even privacy projects, they've had to build projects using components, that are built off the shelf, where privacy is an afterthought. For example, if you're building a P2P, anonymous L1 or crypto L2 or whatever, and you go and use libp2p isn't built to be anonymous. That's what I mean. People taking shortcuts. You can't build something and then add anonymity in afterwards. Anonymity has to be built from day one. It has to be built from the ground up. And that's what I meant. DarkFi is the only project that has been thinking about how we're going to operate in this environment. Everybody else, I see it now with projects like Polkadot and Ethereum. They're seeing DarkFi and they're like, oh, that's a cool upcoming narrative. We're going to use that. But they're just using it to pump their L1. They're not really thinking about how are we going to take this fight to them? How are we going to go operate in this environment? And when you're thinking about how are we going to actually deliver the OG promise of cryptocurrency, you have to be thinking about that. They're going to come after you. Why? Because we're coming after them, and they should be afraid, Glowings. You're in this room with us now. I know it because I've got issues. I've got loads of police issues. And that shows you that they are actually afraid, trying to harass us. It's true. Rose can tell you. I'm not bullshitting. And there's something super cool about tech, because tech is irreversible. It's just an idea. Think about 3D printed guns. As soon as you've made the world's first 3D printed gun, you've put that out and anybody can download and 3D print it and use it to resist governments. That's amazing, and that's what DarkFi is. DarkFi is an idea whose time has come. And what can you do? What can you do on DarkFi? Well, you can buy and sell everything. You can make anonymous DAOs to fund real shit and build the anonymous economic network. Free trade maximalism without limits. Information marketplaces to buy and sell information. That's something we haven't explored in crypto. There's so much space of cool stuff we could do with crypto. We haven't done it yet. Why? Because people are pussies. People are afraid. They're always trying to play it safe. They're trying to play the VC game. That's why people go like, oh, what about this and this project compared to the dark? I'm not afraid of any of them. They're not going to do anything, are they? There's been so many years, nobody has done it. So, and then, okay. Yes, super. Yeah. And yeah, and also, I'll just say the split, the divide is pre-programmed, because the more that we're successful in anonymity, the more that we show people this vision of the future, the more it becomes eminent, the more that states react against it, and the less power they have. That's why now they're acting very authoritarian. They're putting people in jail for free speech. They're trying to ban encryption software. And the more that we are successful in evading that with countermeasures, the more they have to respond with a heavy hand, a strong hand. And the more that they do that, the more it drives people into understanding why we need to preserve this zone of absolute pure free speech on the internet as a refuge in which the seed of a new world can be protected. Um, and the more that we are successful in that, the more that they crack down, and there's a feedback loop between anonymity and the surveillance apparatus. Right now, all of this stuff, AI, surveillance apparatus, is dependent on control of resources, of semiconductors, which is a global pipeline. So the people who have access to that are the people that have access to the most hardware, and cryptography is our defense against that. Literally, when you do cryptography, you are making use of mathematics, which is the language of Mother Nature. There's like a saying by Assange, which is the universe smiles upon encryption. There's also another saying, which is violence cannot solve math problems. What they're saying is, when we do cryptography, we are summoning the power of Mother Nature in order to defend society, in order to expand the space of freedom. And there's nothing they can do about that. They cannot defeat those cryptographic, magic, using man-made laws, using violence. That's like a huge power that we have. And there's something very magical about that we're able to use this cryptography to create, systems, or create schemes which they have some innate property, some innate power that, states are not able to defeat it. It doesn't matter how much resources they have. It literally, it's immutable. It holds its properties against that, and we can use that to build out. Especially with ZK now, we can build out an entire stack. We can build out entire suites of applications that a few years ago was not possible to make. Now we can really dream expansively. The problem with cryptocurrency is it got stuck. Why did it get stuck? Is because, a tale as old as time itself, along the way, you were idealistic and you wanted to change things, but, you started trying to think about how to play the game like everybody else has tried to play the game, and you got stuck in the game. Literally, we set out to create a new economic paradigm. We were like, we're going to unearth banks and, the financial sector. And but the way that we're going to do that is by getting in bed with the banks, is by playing, by becoming like the next Google or Microsoft. And everybody started playing the same Silicon Valley VC game. I've got to make an MVP, I've got to pump it, I've got to get investors, I've got to fund marketers, I've got to shill this thing, I've got to accrue users. And what happens when you're doing that? You go like, who should I be like? I need to be like big tech, and people uncritically even implement the same UI design paradigms. Why? Because they're like, we need to get, the economics of it. We need to accrue users, low IQ cattle users, so that we can have a big user base, so we can tax them, because that indicates my TVL, it indicates some other metric that allows me to raise more capital. What do you do when you get stuck in that game? That's why, we were presented a different vision of how technology would be in the 90s. In the 90s, we were watching sci-fi, and we were like, the future is going to look amazing. It's going to look so cool. And instead, we got all these Java shit delivery web apps on our phones that lag and crash, and it's just nothing like the future we were promised. And cryptocurrency people uncritically just fell into that trap, and they're not trying to they and so everybody's like, oh, we need to be like, credit cards but faster. We need to be like, these apps but a bit more better polished. Nobody was really thinking, how do we create something that's very different, a different kind of experience? In fact, we're not trying to create eBay. We're not trying to create eBay, but with cryptocurrency. We're not trying to. You see this every cycle. Every cycle, someone's like, the next big thing, Airbnb, but decentralized, or Uber, but decentralized. Have you ever thought, actually, what we're trying to create with cryptocurrency is something completely different, something completely unimaginable? People can't, because literally we've got so stuck where we are. And so that's why I mentioned this, because in DarkFi we've been really trying to challenge the status quo on every level, not just like philosophically, not just technically, also in a design level. We've been trying to create a different experience of like sci-fi futurism. We're creating and this is something I've seen now, like even just like the other L1s are just ripping us off because we're too cool. Now they're trying to create a multi-app which is themable and it has its own design paradigm, quite quite telling. And DarkFi, and we just released our mainnet. You can download the mainnet, testnet. Sorry, not the mainnet. Yeah, testnet. Yeah, mainnet. So we just released the one of our stable mainnet. They've got anonymous payments on there, anonymous DAO. There's a DEX deployed. We've also got the chat, the task manager. So this infrastructure's there. We have a ZK compiler. We have WASM smart contracts. The stuff set also merge mined with Monero, so it's like it's not oligarchic, which proof of stake is. It's like everybody has a fair chance of the token distribution from day one, because it's Monero merge mined. And yeah, I mean, yeah. So basically, in the 90s, the sovereign individual predicted. Okay, so it says it has 2 minutes. Yeah, so DarkFi is actually an Agorist project. So agorism is a type of tactics where you could actually use markets to create a parallel economic system, and you can use that parallel economic system to mobilize and to create your own base of power that is outside of nation states, and create a free online digital zone. And crypto anarchy, or cypherpunk. Crypto anarchy is actually the maximalist version of cypherpunk. Cypherpunk is like crypto anarchy light. It's the idea that of the going dark problem, where you can create through cryptography, through this magic power of cryptography, online free speech zones where all human activity can exist, and you can use that power to do agorism as well. You can use that to create parallel economic systems. So that's like what DarkFi is essentially trying to do. Crypto regulation of crypto, limits on crypto, is anybody who advocates that is a domestic enemy of the people. It's an open and official provocation against liberty and sovereignty, and the right of people to own and deploy cryptography is an absolute right. There's 100%, and shall not be infringed at all. So what questions do you have? Tell me.
Well, hang on. Let us get it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I generally totally agree, and I like really the idea of like the state being transparent and the people not. But what about the state, right? Because like one of the problems we have is that like there's like we have the European Commission and they do these secret contracts and like secret with some big players, and we want more transparency. So how about that side? Is there some? How would you reverse it there, or do you think they also have the right for total privacy on like these hidden deals they do in the back door with like
I think we
pharmacies and
need to
stuff?
make a P2P version of WikiLeaks and then like incentivize it using markets. And that's how we get rid of their right to anonymity of nation states, because people will leak information and they get paid for it.
But I mean, there's all this amazing crypto that we are creating right now all together, right? And they also use it, right? I mean, this is when you saw like they're actually using Signal and they're actually using like all the stuff that was like actually like from the ground, from the grassroots was created. Now they're doing it to do these backdoor deals on like the highest levels. And so actually the perfect crypto we create that then cannot leak anymore is like used there. Yeah, any thoughts on? I feel there's just I don't know how to resolve it, so I'm asking you.
That's why I said we make a markets to destroy the business model behind secrecy, because their entire structure is built off of controlling information. So you can actually use cryptography to break that open.
Yeah, I have another question on the like more commercial side. What I'm thinking is that there's a lot of money in the crypto right now that is coming from big banks and governments and so on. How do you think the migration is going to happen? You know, because nobody wants to, or like these big companies don't want to give away their power, their control over the system, or I don't know, the KYC or everything like that. And it's in a perfect world, everything is very private and everybody has their own control over their own money. But how do you think that change is going to happen, or is it going to happen at all, do you think?
I think there's a lot of billionaires that do want to protect their money because of AI. It's going to be like a threat to them. This surveillance regime, especially if like communists get into power and want to tax them. But I also think they're not necessarily the entire market. I think there's a huge market in crypto that's undercatered for. My friend runs NIM projects, and he said the majority of his customers. I said to him to come here, and he said it doesn't make sense because they have very few Western customers. The majority of their customers are actually from Central Asia and Russia and China. I was like, that's real adoption. That's actually people who need anti-censorship tech, and they're actually being used by them. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Maybe a bit more technical question. Could you talk a bit about the state model on your blockchain,
The
DarkFi
what?
L1? The state model? I mean, not the nation state, but the
Yeah,
state
no,
of the
you
blockchain.
got it. You're talking about global state or just any
Yeah,
state?
how it works, like the transactions, or because I'm trying to understand what your zkVM is capable of.
There is like a WASM engine, and there are function calls, like for example to transfer money, or for example in the DAO when you have a proposal that is ready to be executed, somebody will call DAO exec. But the money that is in the treasury of the DAO, the commitment to the coin, there'll be a parameter in the coin that says that this coin can only be spent by DAO exec. And so when DAO exec is called, one of the conditions is of that proposal is the child must be money transfer. When there's a trace of like a function call execution, actually because we're using ZK, those functions are computed ahead of time, and the entire trace of the function calls is unwrapped, and then ZK is used to prove relations on the statements of the data.
Okay. So you do have smart contracts like on Ethereum
Yeah.
with state? Okay.
Huh?
So you have smart contracts with some state, like
Yeah,
DAO
yeah.
or Coin. Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then ZK proofs. The ZK is built into the. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that will be all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It was a huge effort to get up this morning, but I'm glad I did. It was worth it in the end.